So welcome everyone to our eGurus webinar about innovation. So the way that this works is this is for eGurus members only. I am recording it, and the recording will go into the eGurus vault. So it is kind of public, but really it's not available to the whole world. And the purpose of the eGurus webinars is to look at a topic in a little bit more detail. So we get the chance to talk about your business. I tailor the webinar to things that might be of relevance to eGurus and as opposed to the whole world. And we have 45 minutes together, 40 to 45 minutes, and it gives us a chance to go to something in a little bit more depth than I would in my public webinars. So today's webinar is about innovation, and it's looking at how all of us need to be more innovative and what we can do to be more innovative. So I've got some slides here which will take us through a little bit of a process, but because this is a small group and because this is for eGurus members, do feel free to jump in, ask whatever questions you like, share some of your own experiences, and as we go, because that's the whole purpose of these eGurus webinars. So broadly, let me give you the structure of what I'd like to talk about today. It's going to go through these 5 steps. Okay, so the 5 things are, so first of all, get ready. So this is really a little bit of a test about how innovative you are. The next thing is I'll give you a little bit of a couple of little techniques on how to think better, how to improve your thinking, and then how to focus your thinking, because there's no point having great ideas if they're not focused towards doing stuff. A little bit about working in a team, and remember, we eGurus have teams. They may not be permanent employees, but you have people that you might be outsourcing to, you might have peers and colleagues, you might have other eGurus members, so how do you enlist them as well? And lastly, some implementation stuff to actually how to get things done and keep going with your innovation, so it doesn't just happen to be an event, but it's an ongoing part of your business. Okay, so let's start with the first one, which is getting ready. So here's an exercise that I've done with that I do often with my keynote speaking audiences, and it's asking about how you deal with change, because innovation is of course about change, and I'm curious to know how you deal with change. So I've got this little bit of an exercise for you, and because I reckon there are 5 different levels at which you can that you can deal with change. So to start with, think about something that happened recently in your professional life, so in your business, where you had to deal with change in some way. So I'm not going to ask you to share it. I'm not going to ask you to type it in the question box or anything like that, but just think about a situation that happened fairly recently, and how did you deal with it? So again, I'm not going to ask you to share, just make a note, mental note of how you dealt with change. And then I'm going to go through these 5 ways that you could deal with change, and then at the end I'll ask you, which of those you chose. So let me tell you what those 5 ways are, and I'll do it with a little bit of an example of a change. A story about a change that's happening in lots of people's lives is that people are on their mobile phones all the time. So mobile phones are a fantastic tool. Smartphones are one of the greatest technology advances recently, but it also can cause some challenges for people. So how do you deal with that if you're a business? So let me show you how 2 cafes dealt with a similar situation. So one cafe is a cafe which is in Terrigal, just north of Sydney. In fact, Anne Rolfe, I think, is pretty close to Terrigal, and you may even know this cafe. So the manager there got upset because people were walking in, ordering coffees, but while they were standing in line, they were talking on their phone or using their smartphone in some way. So the manager couldn't talk to them, he couldn't have his normal daily chat, and he couldn't the staff couldn't take their orders. So he put this sign up on the cash register, 50-cent surcharge for being on the phone at the counter. It's rude. So he didn't like the impact that the mobile phones were having, so he started charging people for that. So that's certainly one approach. Another approach happened a couple of years ago. In my local cafe Juggler in Leederville in Perth. This is Nino, the proprietor. So he saw the same situation. People were coming into the cafe and they always had their smartphones with them. But he took a different approach. So he teamed up with the people at Rewardle, and he set up this kind of coffee loyalty system. So you can download the Rewardle app, hold it up when you walk in, you hold it up to the little tablet there, and it registers that you've ordered a coffee, and you can use that to earn points. You can even load cash into it so that you don't have to carry a credit card around with you. Oh, sorry, you don't have to carry cash around with you. You just have it on your app. I think Rewardle is a great idea. It's a public company now. I've even bought shares in it, and it's just two examples of two people who saw the same situation, which is that people are on their phones all the time, and they took two different approaches to it. So one decided to penalize it to restore the status quo, and the other one decided to reward it and use it, embrace it, and use it as a way to enhance his business. So what about you? I reckon there are 5 things you could do with any change. So the first one is to ignore it, and I hope you're not doing that. The second one is to resist it, which is what that cafe manager in Terrigal did. So I don't think that's the best thing either, because you're trying to restore the status quo. The third one is to adapt to it or to manage the change, so figure out some workaround. So in the cafe example, you might train your staff that if someone's on their phone when you're trying to take their coffee order, then you politely serve the next person until that first person is ready. Something like that. You could do what Nino did, which is to embrace it, to see it as an opportunity rather than a problem or a threat. And the last one, which not everyone gets to do, is to actually lead or create the change. So who are you the person who actually created the smartphone or created this new trend, created this change in your industry? Okay, so which of these 5 did you do? So how did you deal with the change? So I haven't got an actual poll here, but just think about it as if it was a poll and type in the question box how you dealt with the change. So I'm going to keep this anonymous, so I won't read out what your answer was. But going back to the change that you were talking about, that I asked you to think about a few minutes ago, how did you deal with it? Did you embrace it? Or were you the one who initiated it? Or did you kind of resist it and try to go back to the status quo? Okay, so I'm just going to keep going because you can. Oh, okay, someone's written down embrace it, which is good. So that's very good. I'm just going to give you the chance to write that down. You don't have to share it publicly, but think about which of those 5 levels you're at, because if you did embrace it or lead it, fantastic. And most of us in our professional life as an e-guru, in what we deliver, we're telling our clients how important it is to embrace change or maybe even lead change. And I just wonder whether we're doing it ourselves in our own life. Okay, so that's the first question. And if you are already resisting change or ignoring it, I don't think any of us ignoring it, but if you're resisting it, then just be aware, just be careful, because it might be a sign that you just need to shift your thinking. All right, let me give you some ideas about thinking better. So this is a couple of techniques that I'm going to share with you in how to look at what's happening in the world and use that for your own innovation. So the first one is a skill which the Institute for the Future identified as one of the 10 skills for the future workforce. These are the things that are going to be future-proof, the things that are difficult to outsource or automate, and if you have these skills, then you're more likely to be future-proofed in your business, to future-proof your business and your career. And this skill, which is one of the 10, is called transdisciplinarity. And I think of it as just simply making connections. So transdisciplinarity, in its technical sense, means that you've got skills that you can transfer across different disciplines. I just think of it as making connections. So you've got some knowledge, some expertise, some insights, and can you apply them, and can you see how other disciplines can apply to yours, and can you apply those skills to other disciplines? For example, I reckon you should look at technology that you see, trends that you see, and we as e-gurus see a lot of them, and figure out how they apply in different industries. So for example, when I speak at healthcare conferences, I often use this example that in the near future, when somebody's having a heart attack, a driverless ambulance will drive up there to pick them up. There'll be a paramedic, but they won't need a driver. And because all the cars on the road are driverless, because that will be the case in the near future, the ambulance won't need flashing lights and a siren, because the other cars are connected wirelessly through the network, and they know to give way to emergency vehicles. Then on the way, either a chip implanted on the patient's skin or some wearables on their clothes will be transmitting data to artificial intelligence software in the cloud that will do a diagnosis of what's happened, so that they can notify a cardiologist, so she's ready to do the exact operation that's required when the patient turns up at the hospital. And when I say they notify, it's the software notifies the cardiologist. Along the way, a 3D printer in the ambulance will print a stent for that operation. And a drone might deliver equipment or medical supplies that's required for the operation. If they'll automatically check the stock that's available, and if it's not enough, then a drone can deliver that equipment. So all of this technology, is available now. You've probably heard about some of it: 3D printing, driverless cars, drones, artificial intelligence. But if you're working in healthcare, or if you've got clients working in healthcare, perhaps it's worthwhile understanding how some of this technology could apply. And one of the things that I do whenever I speak at a conference is I look at whatever industry I'm speaking to. So I do a lot of work in financial services at the moment, quite a bit in real estate, some in insurance, a little bit in healthcare, and there's a variety of industries. One of the things I look at is what are these technologies that we often hear about, and how can they apply? How can they be applied in this industry? So that's a really useful tool for any of us to do. You don't have to be a futurist to do that. We all, as e-gurus, have to be futurists to some extent. And one other little nifty thing is that all of this technology could become obsolete. Certainly, all of that chain could become obsolete in the near future when we have nanotechnology, robotic surgery. So you're having a heart attack, and you swallow a pill, a tiny army of robots goes to work inside you doing the operation. So what could possibly go wrong in that scenario, right? Okay, let me give you another example. This one is in financial services, and let's take financial planning, for example, because I've done quite a bit of work recently in that area. So I've done this research and this scenario in that industry. So there's already a software that's collecting big data. So it's collecting data about individual clients as well as data about investments, and is creating a financial plan automatically. In the industry, this is called robo-advice, and smart financial planners are using it to enhance with the offering that they can make. The ones who aren't so smart are scared that it's going to take away their jobs. It's not. They can just use it more effectively. Then you get things like gamification. So remember the big Pokemon Go craze that happened around the middle of last year, where people were playing games just to earn points and to get prizes. But these are all virtual prizes. Well, imagine that working in the financial services industry. You have a financial plan, and in your daily life, you're playing games that will help you move towards your financial goals. And then you'll also be able to upload a 3D version of yourself into possible future scenarios, so you can see what happens if you follow this current trajectory, or if you change your financial plan and you work to a different future. You can see what your life is going to look like in the future by stepping into a virtual reality world to see what your life is going to be like in 20, 30, 50 years' time. And then on a day-to-day basis, when you're going to purchase shoes or technology or a car or something, you might have in your glasses a little chip that, like Google Glass, that will tell you in real time what you're about to purchase and how it fits in with your financial plan. So are you going to break the bank? Are you going to break your budget by doing it? Or is it part of the plan? So again, this technology exists already. It may not be connected yet at this level, but it does exist. And then in the near future, we'll be even able to do DNA analysis of a fetus in the womb, and based on that, make certain predictions about certain characteristics about that person. And based on that, in the near future, we'll be able to create a financial plan for them before they're even born. Okay, so that's a couple of examples in healthcare and financial services. What I'd love you to do, if you are looking at being more innovative for your clients, is to do the same thing for them. Figure out an industry that you're working with or that you'd like to work with, look at some of the technologies, some of the trends that are out there, and then figure out how you can make them work together. So how do you connect them? How do they apply to that industry? And then you might also like to think about how it applies to your industry. For example, this weekend I'm speaking at the PSA conference, the Professional Speakers Association, and I'm doing a keynote about the future of speaking, and it's looking at some of the technology that may be coming from outside the speaking industry, but it's going to have an impact within the speaking industry. Okay, so let me just stop there and just ask if anyone has any questions, comments, any ideas. Again, this is a small group, so if you want to raise your hand, I'll turn your microphone on. If you don't want to speak out loud, then just type your question in the question box. I'll be happy to answer it for you, or if you want to just raise a point for discussion, happy to do that as well. Okay, I'm going to keep going. So the second area, this is the second idea about how to think better, is based on something that Richard Wiseman, who's a social psychologist, listed in his book, The Luck Factor. And he has, as you can see from the book cover, 4 simple principles that will change your luck in your life. Now, some people think that they're naturally lucky. Some people think that they were born lucky. But Wiseman did some research into actually there are some people who seem to be luckier than others, and he did some research to find out what makes them tick. So how do they get luckier? And one of the 4 factors, and I won't share them all with you, but one that he found was that extroverts tend to be luckier than introverts. And the reason for that is extroverts just put themselves out there more. So they're more likely, if they're standing in line somewhere, they're more likely to turn around and talk to the person behind them or in front of them in the queue. Whereas the introvert is the person who will always be on their smartphone and just avoiding eye contact or interaction with other people. And so because you interact with people, it may just be a random conversation, but that random conversation might spark an important connection that you think later, oh, I was just so lucky that happened, and you were, but the introvert would never get into that situation. So how do you expose yourself to more opportunities for getting new ideas? So where do you get your new ideas from? For example, recently I was taking an Uber from home to the airport, and I was flying to Sydney to speak at a conference, and the Uber driver said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, I talk about the future of different industries." And he said, "Oh, you're a futurist." And I said, "Yeah, that's really interesting because not many people know what a futurist is. So I rarely, when I'm talking to people outside the industry, I rarely say I'm a futurist." But this Uber driver, the next traffic light that we stopped at, he pulled out this book and he said, "Oh, I'm reading this book with 150 futurists talking about what's coming up in the future." And I thought that was really interesting. And that wouldn't have happened if I had taken a taxi or if I was in a limo or was being driven to the airport by a friend. It just happened because I happened to put myself in a situation where I was connecting with, if you like, a random person that I wouldn't have normally connected with. And that's one of the reasons I like using Uber from time to time, because I do connect with people who are quite often doing it part-time. Some of them are doing it full-time. Some of them are investment bankers who are now doing this, now retired, doing this as a second job. Some of them, a lot of them are immigrants, but I interact with a diverse group of people. And for me, being an introvert, it forces me to be in that situation. So one of the places you can get new ideas from is by interacting with different people and different kinds of people. I mean, I'll talk a little bit later about encouraging that sort of diverse thinking. And the second thing is, of course, in travel. There's a speaker that I know who travels a lot internationally, and one of the things he does is he makes sure that he tries to find something new and novel in every place that he visits. And it's not hard because he goes to lots of different places, but he makes an effort to do that. Your personal activities, your hobbies, do you have opportunities to get to have new ideas there that you can use in your business as well? There's so many places online where you can get new ideas. Just be careful that you're not caught up in the bubble of only getting ideas that gel with the ones that you're already aligned with. So if you spend a lot of time on social media, you tend to get, especially like closed areas like Facebook, you tend to get the ideas that match what you already know, because you hang out with people who have similar ideas to you, and Facebook tends to send you more news updates of things that you already like, and maybe you need to get out of that bubble and explore elsewhere. Are there other things that happen in your personal life that you can use, so personal stories and so on, and other things from history that you could use, so things from the past that could be valuable for you understanding the future and getting ideas for the future? So where do you get your new ideas? Do you get your ideas from from which of these places or from others? I'll give you the chance to share if you want to, where you get your new ideas, so just share them in the question box, or if you've got any questions, feel free to ask questions as well. Okay, so far we've talked about just getting ideas, and we haven't really been very focused about where the ideas come from. So I now want to look at how to be a little bit more focused. So it's great to have ideas, but how do you make sure that they're working towards solving your clients' problems? Because everything that you do, innovation, is all about solving problems. So the head of Google's global education, he says that when he talks to school groups, he goes around talking to students, he never says to them, what do you want to be when you grow up? What he does is he asks them, what problem do you want to solve when you grow up? And I reckon that's a really useful frame for all of us as well. I'd like you to think that when you look at your business and you look at innovation, you're asking, what problems do you want to solve when you grow up? Thank you, Michael, for contributing a comment. I think this is so. Yeah, so working in Japan this weekend and next week, and arrange appointments with local companies to see what they're doing great. So that's an example of using travel and actually proactively making it an opportunity, because that might spark some ideas. And then, as I'm saying here, the next step is to make sure that in the back of your mind or the front of your mind, think about the problems that you're solving. And I reckon when you think about your innovation programs, do them at 3 levels. There are 3 kinds of innovation that you could do. So if you think of a scale from A to Z, where Z is the most way out there thing that you could do, and this is in terms of time as well. There are 3 kinds of innovation. So the first one is A to B, bit by bit innovation. So this is innovation that you do on a daily basis. So what can you improve in the way that you deliver your service, in your internal processes, in the way that you interact with people? So for example, I have an 80-point checklist for every speaking booking that I get. Now, it didn't start off as an 80-point checklist. It started off as a fairly small thing when I first started speaking as a business 3 years ago. But over time, it's grown because I keep adding to it. And it's just done by bit innovation. So what are you doing on a daily basis to innovate? The second kind is the goal-oriented innovation, which is what I call A to G, which is projects. So bit-by-bit innovation is a really good thing that managers can do. A goal-oriented innovation is when you take on the role as a leader. And I mean, even if you're an e-guru running a business just by yourself, it is still a leadership role to take on a 90-day project, for example, and work towards that, and then bring other people on board, people within your team or outside. And then there's a big kind of innovation, which is when you go on a quest. So that's A to X innovation. You don't exactly know where it's going to end up, but this is the things that are going to change the world. And if it doesn't change the world, it maybe change your world. So it may be something significant that'll change your business. Maybe you're going to a completely new business. I was talking to somebody recently, and I've known him for a long time, and he said it's really interesting to see the evolution, the development of me starting off in business as a web designer and now moving into the space of becoming a professional speaker. And I said, this is really in my life, this is my 5th career. So it's not just evolving, but it's changing careers, so changing directions. So these are different quests that you might choose to go on. And more, we have to be both transformational leaders in our own business, so transform our business, and also help our clients go on quests. But also, I don't want to diminish the value of these other 3 things. So if you think about like bit-by-bit innovation, it's really valuable. So Team Sky, which is a British team that won the Tour de France, they were famous for doing these tiny little innovations and to get what they call get marginal gains. So for example, they had their drink bottles were color coded. So if it had a white top, that meant that it was water. If it had a colored top, it was an energy drink. And just by doing that, they just gained a couple of extra seconds, and all these little extra seconds added up till they won the Tour de France. So that's bit by bit. Goal-oriented innovation. I've talked about this before, so I don't want to talk a lot about it here, but there's a lot of value to having 90-day projects or 3-month projects rather than 12-month goals. So instead of saying where would you like to be in 12 months from now, and there's nothing wrong with that, but in addition to that, work in 90-day projects. I've just recently signed up with Thought Leaders Business School, and they do exactly the same thing. So we get together every 90 days. I've just done the first one last month. We get together every 90 days and for 3 days, and for those 3 days we work on our project, what they call a cluster, for the next 90 days. And then in that 90 days, week by week, we can work towards the goal that we set. There's a few advantages to 90-day projects. So one is that the world doesn't change so fast in 90 days that your project becomes obsolete. You might still choose to fail it or to stop it, but it's less likely than if you have a 12-month goal, because things do change so fast. The second thing is it's long enough for you to actually do something significant. If you think about actually achieving something in 90 days or 12 weeks, it's totally achievable. The other thing about a 90-day project is that you can see it very clearly. So you can set up a spreadsheet or write it up on a whiteboard, or you could have some form of visual representation of 90 days. And it's not too difficult to look ahead and plan what you're going to do in week 10 of your 12-week project. It is quite hard to predict what you're going to be doing in week 48 of your 52-week project. So there's a lot of advantages to doing 90-day projects, so do that. And the last one is, if you want to go on a quest, what is your big idea? And not everyone will go on a quest, and not everyone will go on a quest all the time. So you don't have to do that to be innovative. You can be very innovative just with the first two things, A to B, bit by bit, or A to G, goal-oriented innovation. But maybe you do have a big idea, and it's an idea that's going to change the world. The guy who heads up Box, Sam Scilacci, so Box is a little bit like Dropbox. It's a competitor to Dropbox. He said this, and I reckon that this is a really good frame and a guide for going on a quest. So he says, if 80% think it's the dumbest idea they've ever heard, and 20% think it's the best thing since sliced bread, then that's probably worthwhile. And but that doesn't apply to every innovation. This is when you're thinking about a quest. Okay, so what are yours? What do? Do you do bit-by-bit innovation? Do you do 90-day projects? And are you on a quest? Here's a chance to share if you'd like to type questions in the question box, or if you'd like to turn your microphone on and or raise your hand and I'll turn your microphone on, and you're welcome to ask a question out loud or share your own experiences. Okay, let's continue then. So leading into the next area, actually here's another one. Anne's on, right, yeah, so Anne's on a quest, changing my business model, and you absolutely are, right, and do 90 days as well. Yeah, that's right, and I know a little bit of Anne's background, so great, and it's fantastic, Anne, that you're taking this opportunity now to do something that has worked really well for you in the past, and putting it at some risk, but in a very smart way. Marie says 90-day projects work well for me, but handling what comes from out of left field is a challenge. Yeah, so I find the same thing, Marie, and the thing that really helps me with that is the left field stuff. I just figure out, is it going to knock me off course from my 90-day project? And if it is, then I'm happy to defer it. The other thing I really like about 90-day projects is that I kind of can keep in my head short-term things. So if I know I need to do something that's part of my 90-day project, I put on my to-do, have it in my head, put it on my to-do list, but because it's a 90-day project, I can stick it in 2 months down the track and know that it's not going to get forgotten, but it's going to get done there. So the left field thing is really, it's useful to have a direction and a focus. So the stuff that comes in out of left field, you can decide whether it fits within the next 90 days or not. And I've become a lot more selective about the things that I'm willing to do that didn't fit within my plan. I still do them, but only if they don't take me off plan. Okay, so Anne has asked a question. Are you going to talk about having a word to keep you focused? I know what you mean, Anne, and I wasn't going to talk about that, but would you like to talk about that? If you would, then please raise your hand and I'll turn your mic on because I think it is useful.
Hello, Gihan. Lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise.
So one of the things that I and a bunch of my friends, and we have a MetaMind circle, so we meet monthly. It's kind of a mastermind group. We've been doing this for a few years now. We've adopted some time back a process where every year each of us chooses a focus word. And it's kind of something that represents what we want to achieve, what's going on for us. It kind of represents our values at the moment and kind of ties in a whole bunch of disparate, well, they're not disparate, I suppose, but different goals that we might have, so we're not pulled in different directions. And it seems to work really well. And I think you actually use it in 90-day projects as well. I think I've heard someone else talk about it in relation, or you talk about it in 90-day projects. Because, you can do a lot of detailed planning, and that's all good and necessary, but you need to have something that easily springs to mind, like a bit of a slogan, and we've found the one word actually can be that sometimes for the whole 12 months. So my word this year is energy, because the thing that has been concerning me over the last couple of years is I'm getting older. Do I have the energy to do all these things? So energy is my word, and I have a bunch of goals around maintaining my health and well-being, boosting my personal energy in lots of ways, and also bringing a different energy into my business, and thus changing my business model as well. So a single word that helps you keep focused. And then when you get something that comes up, or a different opportunity, or something that could be a distraction, you can go back to that word and think, well, does it fit with this? Because that word represents what's really important to you right now, or at least this year or this 90 days. That word represents what's the heart of it, what's really important. Excuse me. So you can evaluate, should I go on this other direction or pick up this other opportunity, or should I stay really focused? Where's the fit? So that's how the word helps me.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks so much for sharing that, Dan. And I haven't used it for 90-day projects, but I have used it for my 12-month. So I have a theme for the year. So yeah, great. Thank you for that. So my theme for this year is team, because I want to leverage up my team. And so a big part of that is getting a PA, just extending my team, getting my outsourced team working more effectively, finding a few more outsourced people for business book in a box projects and so on. 10 years ago, when I started the eGurus community, my word for the year was membership. So I would do everything I could to get new members. So speak for nothing, to get in front of groups who might end up giving me potential members and so on. So yeah, I think it's a great idea, Anne. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else who wants to comment on that? Okay, let me continue. Okay, so this is a little bit of a puzzle. I've got these three things here, and I'm going to ask you, what do these three things have in common? You're welcome to, if you've seen this one before, you're welcome to jump in with the answer, and if you haven't, have a go at it. So Amazon Prime, Gmail, and McCafe. So those are the three things. So Amazon Prime is Amazon's membership service. So, we've all bought stuff from Amazon, but we tend to buy them on single transactions, but they've got a membership service which you can join for, I think, like $100 a year, and you get things like free shipping or lower shipping, you get special deals and so on. Gmail, we all know, is Google's free email service, and McCafe, people who go to McDonald's know about McCafes. So what do those three things have in common? Would you like to have a guess in the question box? And I'm sure you can find things that are in common between all three, but I'm looking for something specific which is going to lead on to the next area. So I remember the last time I asked this, somebody said these are all like sub-services of the main service, which is absolutely true. But what else? What else do they have in common? Okay, let me tell you what they've got in common, because it leads on to the next area. And the thing I was looking for is that they were all suggestions from employees. So Amazon Prime came about as a suggestion from one of the Amazon employees through their online suggestion box. Gmail was created using Google's 20% time, at a time when they used to give their engineers 20% of their time off, so basically 1 day a week, to work on anything they liked, and without restriction. And Gmail was one of the things that came out of it. And McCafe was something that's now been adopted worldwide, but it was started by a McDonald's franchisee in Melbourne, as it turned out, and now it's been adopted worldwide. So this is the next area, which is, how do you engage the people in your team? So however big your team is, so your team may be you and you working in an office as a sole operator, but the team extends to the outsourced people that you use, the suppliers that you use, maybe even working with your clients as part of your team. I know there are people here who work very closely in their clients' businesses, and so the clients are part of the team as well. So how do you get the most out of your team members? I have done Well, we'll get to this. Okay, so as one of my consulting clients, Dr. Nikki Howe says, didn't you employ knowledge workers for their knowledge? And we as e-gurus are knowledge workers ourselves, and the people that we tend to use in our team tend to be knowledge workers. So are you making use of them beyond just their standard role? So if you outsource a bit of work to somebody, is that the only intelligence that you're using or the only expertise that you're using from them? Or are you bringing them to be a bigger part of your team? And when I teach innovation, so when I do my innovation keynote, I talk to leaders about how they light their fire. And we talk about the fire triangle. As the fire triangle says that a fire to 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 thrive needs three things. It needs oxygen, it needs a fuel, and then and spark, and it needs a fuel. So in the same way, you need to create the space, so create the environment for innovation. You then need to ignite it, so spark the innovation, because it doesn't always happen automatically. And the last one is to give it to fan the flames, to give it the oxygen to let it continue. So you don't just want a spark, you want to fan the flames. And there are lots of things that will not light their fire. And if you work in a team environment, you probably have heard some of these things, like we tried that before, we've never done it that way, we're too busy. If you are working, as many of us as e-gurus tend to work in a smaller group, or maybe just ourselves, then we probably don't say these sort of things often, but just be aware that you might be saying some of these things, even subconsciously and even implicitly to some of your team members. Especially, and I think for us as e-gurus members, just be aware that the people that we outsource work to are really valuable assets in our team, and we might just use them as pay $50 and you do a job for me in Upwork, and that's it, we're done. But remember that that outsourced team member has access to lots of clients, possibly around the world. They have a lot of experience that we don't have. They have a lot of insights that they could give our business if only we asked for it. And maybe it's worthwhile setting them up on a retainer, so you pay them a monthly fee, and that way that you feel that you can ask them other questions that go beyond their initial job. They don't feel like they have to spend a lot of extra time to get a $50 job done. So maybe it's worthwhile doing it that way rather than just treating them on a transaction basis. And I think for us, as if we're sole operators, or we've just got one or two people in our office and we don't interact, we don't really lead a team on a day-to-day basis, just figure out how you can make use of other people who you may not have thought of as team members before. I'm not going to talk a lot about involving your team, but I do talk about that quite a bit in my audio program, The Future of Innovation. And yeah, it's a CD program, but you don't need to go out and buy it. You can get it you can just download it in the eGurus community. So just go to the innovation section, just search innovation in the eGurus vault, and you'll be able to download the full MP3 audio version of that. So if you're looking at building up your team, and this might be for you, because I know that's one of the things you're looking to do, and other people here as well, just download that MP3 program and listen to it. It's got quite a big area about team. Any other questions or comments about that before we get into the last area? As I said, I don't plan to talk a lot about it, but if you've got burning questions or things that you'd like to share, then feel free to do that. I'm happy to make the time here. Okay, so let's move on to the last one, which is actually the one that we've touched on already, which is how to keep the innovation going, or how to get things done. So I talked about setting up innovation projects, but now I want to specifically talk about a little bit about execution. So it's all about making sure that innovation doesn't happen to be just a single event, but it's an ongoing process in your business. And this is as much for you as it is for anybody else that you're using in your business. So it's easy to watch a webinar like this and go away really inspired, and you might put 2 or 3 things into practice straight away. But how do you make sure that it continues? So some of you may have heard about the Good Samaritan study. So this is a famous psychological study that was done with seminarians who were people studying to be priests. And they did this study to find out how willing they would be to help somebody who was in distress. They had an actor at one of these campuses, at a seminary campus, and they had these students who had just been to a lecture, and they were walking across campus to go to another lecture, and along the way there was this actor who looked distressed and looked like they needed help, and the students had to walk past this person. And what the researchers were testing was, would they stop and help this person who was in distress? And they tried different circumstances, different test conditions. So one is that they had them, in the previous lecture, they just studied the story of the Good Samaritan from the Bible, where a traveler on the side of the road had fallen down, and different people didn't stop to help them, and one person did. So they just studied that story as they were walking across to their next lecture. Did that make them more likely to help? No, it didn't. They tried some other things, like a few other things, to just see what they could do to see what was more likely to make them help. So if the person looked more distressed, were they more likely to help? Again, no, that wasn't the case. So they found there was one thing that made a difference. And the one thing was this, that if they were in a rush to get to the next lecture, they were less likely to help. But if they had a little bit of time, then they were more likely to help. So that was the thing that made the biggest difference. It was the fact that they actually had the time to do it. And I reckon if you're looking at making innovation a habit in your business, then make sure that you provide these three: create the right environment for them, give them permission, give people permission to innovate, give them time to innovate, and give them a focus for their innovation. And when I say people, I'm talking about you as well as the people in your team. And I reckon the most important principle, if you want to make innovation a habit, is just this, is that habit trumps discipline. So if you can create innovation habits in your business, it's more likely to happen. And I reckon it happens in three areas. So it happens in time, in money, and in people. So have you got time for innovation? I know Anne has shared before that she has a marketing Monday, so she sets aside Monday as her marketing day. I generally set aside Fridays as my non-client day, so it's when I work on non-client work. Matt Church says do one important thing before 8 a.m. each day, so you get stuff done. So that's not necessarily focused on innovation or those three ideas, but have you set time where you're actually going to set aside time for innovation? Do you set aside money for innovation? So Michael Harrison, who's on this webinar today, gave me a great idea that he sets aside money every month that goes into Gadgets and Technology Fund. And I do the same thing now, which means that we can buy stuff that even if our previous phone isn't obsolete, we've got the money set aside to buy the next one, because we talk about technology, so we need to be up to date with technology that's there. So because the money is set aside, it doesn't get missed, so the money is already there. So have you got resources like money set aside for innovation? And then, are you hanging out with the right sort of people? And by the right sort of people, there's no wrong sort of people, but are you hanging out with diverse people for innovation? So for example, I run in Perth a monthly business book club, business book discussion group. So we get together, and this happens at my house. So there's a limit of 15 people that I can fit into my lounge room and dining room. And we get together every month and discuss a book. So this is a photo of the flip chart that I used last month. We were talking about The Talent Code by Daniel Coyle, which is a book that I read a couple of years ago. But we have this group of 15 diverse people. They're not all business people. They're certainly not all speakers. There's a couple of retirees. There's somebody who runs an aged care center. There's two teachers. There's somebody who works in the wine industry. There's a CEO, an entrepreneur. So we have this diverse thinking, and I facilitate it. I don't train people in it, but I facilitate the discussion. And this is an example of some of the diverse thinking that we get. And I always walk away with something new, some interesting insight that I wouldn't have got if by just reading the book myself, and also I wouldn't have got if I just hung out with a bunch of other speakers or other e-gurus. So find ways that you can create diversity in thinking, so expose yourself to other kinds of thinking. For me, one of those, as I said earlier, is driving an Uber and talking to Uber drivers as I go. Okay, so any questions about that, any comments about that, anything you'd like to share about creating innovation habits in your workplace? Okay, good. I don't see any comments coming in. I don't see any hands raised. So just to finish up, because we're right on time, which says perfect timing here. The biggest thing I would say if you want to be more innovative is just say yes to stuff more often. And sometimes this means fighting our natural tendency to say no to things and simplify our lives because we've got so much stuff happening. Be willing to fight that and say yes more often. It doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything, but where there's a tendency to automatically say, no, I'm too busy, actually say yes to a few more things. My last story is a story of my very first job out of uni. I was working as a software developer, and my very first overseas business trip was we were working on this software that would monitor undersea cable systems. So this was the early version of the internet. This company in the UK, Cable and Wireless, STC Submarine Systems was our client. They were laying these cables for Cable and Wireless, and we did the computer systems that would monitor that. And so I got to go to Hong Kong, this remote cable station on the most remote part of Hong Kong Island, and this is like a computer system that the hardware guys put in, and I was responsible for the software. So I was there installing this software and testing it to make sure that they were monitoring the early parts of the early versions of the internet. And I remember talking to some of the clients there who were really nice guys, and I was there for 3 weeks. So I really got to know them quite well. And one of them said, look, you're doing a really good job. This cable's going to be really useful to us. But did you know that it's already obsolete and it's going to be decommissioned in a couple of years because they're already building the next version? And I thought that's really interesting, because here we are. Why are we now installing something that's going to be obsolete in 2 years' time? But then I just realized that, yeah, you have to do that. You have to do stuff even if it's going to be obsolete, because otherwise nothing is going to get done. You've got to start before you're ready, and it's nothing. We're never going to get to the point where we say we've got the perfect technology, we've got the perfect system, we've got the perfect idea, and it's going to keep us going for the rest of our lives or for the life of our business. You just got to start. You just got to get stuff done. So that's my last message here. Marie's got a comment, says that Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook says, if you get the opportunity to get on a seat on a ship into space, don't ask where will I sit, just jump on. Yeah, so I love that. And yeah, absolutely right. So yeah, so just go for it. So go for it. And that principle of start before you're ready has served me really well in the last 20 years that I've been running my business, and I hope it serves you well as well. So we're all friends here in the eGurus community. You know how to get in touch with me, so I don't even need to show you my website and email address, but please do email me if you've got any questions. Please engage with me. If you haven't had your quarterly Skype call for a while, please feel free to ask. Set it up and we can have a conversation. So thank you everyone for coming along to the eGurus webinar. I'll be back again in a month or two with the next webinar for the series. If you've got any requests about particular webinars that you'd like me to, topics that you'd like me to cover in webinars, please ask. I'm very responsive, especially to the eGurus group. The couple that I've got planned, one is about new productivity and collaboration tools. So I'll just share with you some of the technical tools that are available now, and another one about webinars specifically is kind of like an open Q&A for like advanced webinar skills. But if you've got anything else, I'm happy to bump those to a little bit later and make this a higher priority. So thanks everyone, and have a great month. Bye for now.